Have you ever looked at the price of an item and thought, wow, it was a lot cheaper last time I bought it? Well, that's something called inflation. So what is it, how does it work, and why does it matter? Let's find out. Inflation is the increase in the average price level of goods and services over time. Put simply, it means your money buys less than it used to. Or in other words, your purchasing power is reducing.
Even though slow inflation is good because that means the economy is growing, fast inflation can slow economic growth and even lead to recession.
To understand it better, think of it as a race between your money and prices. When prices rise faster than your income, you're losing ground. What really causes inflation? Well, let's see. Inflation doesn't just happen. There are causes behind it. One common cause is demand pull inflation. When there is high demand for goods and services, prices tend to rise. Cost push inflation, on the other hand, occurs when production costs go up, leading to price increases. And the last but not least, built inflation is a result of expectations. If people expect prices to rise, they'll demand higher wages, which can trigger more inflation. So how do we really measure inflation? Well, there are several ways, but the most common one is through price indices. Economists track the prices of baskets of goods and services over time. The change in these prices help determine the inflation rate. Now let's look at the effects of inflation. Inflation has a wide range of effects on our lives. Your purchasing power decreases as your money buys less, making it harder to afford the same goods and services. If your savings and investments don't keep up with inflation, they can lose value over time. Wage increases might lag behind inflation, resulting in lower real income. Let's take a look on how governments and central banks cope with inflation. So governments and central banks aim to manage inflation to keep it under control. Central banks, like in the USA Federal Reserve, can adjust interest rates to influence borrowing and spending, which can impact inflation. And this is known as monetary policy. But governments can also use fiscal policies, such as taxes and government spending, to manage inflation. To help you understand it better, let's bring back Joe. Joe lives in an imaginary country, and there he owns a bakery where he sells bread for $2. In his country, for a known reason, there's decrease in oil availability. This increases Joe's delivery costs of flour, eggs, etc. Now Joe can't produce as many breads as he could, so he has to increase the price of bread to $3. To try to save inflation, central bank makes a huge mistake by trying to use monetary policy. They lower interest rates to influence spending. But now that everyone takes credits, there is so much money circling around that people are bidding for Joe's bread, which leads to Joe increasing prices once more. In conclusion, slow inflation can be a sign of growing economy. However, fast inflation can lead to hyperinflation and recession. So to deal with this problem, central banks and governments can issue monetary and fiscal policy.